I grew up in a perfectly average-looking suburban home in Massachusetts, the kind with a tidy lawn, a two-car garage, and a flag flapping on the porch every 4th of July. But inside that home, the emotional temperature was anything but typical. From my earliest memories, there was always one star of the show. Kate, my older sister by 7 years. Every inch of our house was a shrine to her. Her awards lined the hallway. Photos of her in debate tournaments, science fairs, ballet recitals. You'd think she was the only child. Meanwhile, the only photo of me on display was a class picture tucked behind a lamp in the living room. It's funny the things you remember as a child. I remember my 10th birthday not because of the party or the gifts, but because there wasn't one. My parents forgot. They were too busy preparing Kate for a college interview. That night, they brought home a leftover graduation cake. Her name still iced across the top. "We can just scrape it off," Mom said with a tired smile. I never even got to blow out candles. It never got better. If Kate scored a B+, she got a dinner out and a brand new phone. I brought home straight A's for 2 years in a row. Barely earned a good job, sweetie. When I won a middle school art competition, my dad didn't show up to the ceremony because Kate had a college tour. I stopped expecting anything from them after that. It wasn't just the recognition. Even the material things drew a sharp line between our worth. Kate got the new clothes, the latest gadgets, the best tutors. I got her old violin, too big for me, and was told to be grateful. We already spent money on Kate's piano lessons. My mom said when I asked if I could get one my size. In high school, she got private SAT tutoring. I studied with borrowed books from the library. She got a car for graduation. I was told to take the bus. Kate was the center of every conversation, every family plan, every decision. She shined so brightly there was barely any space for me to exist. At first I tried harder, hoping maybe if I worked twice as hard I'd get half the attention. But over time, I just gave up. I learned to hide my achievements, celebrate alone in my room. I became the background character in my own family. What stung most wasn't just the inequality, it was how normal everyone treated it, like it was just the way things were. Even when I dared to express how I felt, I was met with blank stares or told I was being dramatic. I wasn't looking for a parade, I just wanted to feel seen. Looking back now, I realize how deep that wound runs. The years of invisibility turned into a constant ache, a belief that no matter how hard I worked, how kind I was, I'd never be enough, not compared to her. Kate, the golden child. Me? I was the reliable one, the helper, the afterthought. I spent decades thinking this was just family, that maybe love meant quietly standing in the background while someone else took center stage. But something inside me was starting to crack. I didn't know it yet, but this lifelong dynamic was about to be tested, and for the first time I'd begin to ask, what if I stopped shrinking to fit their world? What if I chose me? By the time Kate got married 7 years ago, I had already resigned myself to the role I was born into, supporting actress in the long-running drama of Kate's amazing life. But I had no idea just how much further that dynamic could stretch, how much more I'd be expected to give. The wedding was extravagant, not just elegant, not just nice, extravagant. A designer dress, an upscale venue that cost more than I made in a year, over 300 guests. My parents took out another loan, even though they were still paying off Kate's student debt. I remember overhearing them whispering in the kitchen one night. "It's her special day. Nothing's too good for Kate." That night, I sat in my room, looking over my own budget spreadsheet, trying to figure out how I could afford to fly out for the bachelorette weekend and still cover my rent. Of course, I was the maid of honor. "Who else would it be?" my mother said, brushing off my protests like I was being difficult. I worked a full-time job in marketing. Fast-paced, high-stress, deadlines always breathing down my neck. But somehow I was also expected to plan Kate's bridal shower, organize a weekend bachelorette getaway, and be on call for every meltdown about tablecloth colors or last-minute guest changes. Anytime I tried to express how overwhelmed I was, I got the same response. "Don't be selfish, Elizabeth. This is your sister's moment." As if moments weren't allowed for me, as if I hadn't been making sacrifices for her since I was a child. And it didn't stop after the wedding. The moment Kate announced she was pregnant, with twins no less, my parents acted like the second coming was upon us. They drained what was left of their retirement to help Kate and her husband Jack buy a home just 15 minutes from their own. The same parents who told me they couldn't afford to help with my public college tuition because they were tapped out. The same parents who gave Kate a car and paid for her tutoring while I worked 2 jobs just to get by. When I gently reminded them of that difference, they brushed it off. "This is different," Mom said. "This is for our grandchildren." And that's how I became the default babysitter. At first, it was the occasional ask, "Can you watch the boys for a few hours?" Which quickly became every weekend, every doctor's appointment, every date night. My Saturdays vanished. My Sundays became toddler chaos. My tiny apartment was turned upside down weekly, covered in cracker crumbs, sticky fingerprints, and tiny sock trails. When I tried to set boundaries, I was met with guilt and manipulation. Kate would cry, say she was overwhelmed, ask how I could abandon her. My parents piled on with their signature line, "This is what family does." And yet, none of them ever asked what I needed. A few weeks ago, I got the biggest professional opportunity of my life, a promotion that would involve more travel and longer hours, but also a real shot at leadership. I was thrilled, practically shaking when I told my family over dinner. They stared at me like I'd announced I was joining a cult. "But what about the twins?" my mother said. "You can't take that job, Elizabeth," Kate added, aghast. "Who's going to help me with the boys?" No congratulations, no pride, just panic that I might be less available for their needs. That was the moment something snapped in me. I looked around the table and realized that no one there saw me as a full person, just a resource, a support beam, a built-in babysitter. And for the first time in 35 years, I started to wonder, what would it look like if I walked away from all of this? After that dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling of being invisible. Not just overlooked, but actively erased in my own life. I went home, sat on my worn-out couch, which the twins had permanently stained with marker, and just cried. Not from anger, not even sadness, just exhaustion, emotional, physical, mental, a deep, bone-level fatigue that years of being second best had worn into me. I knew something had to change. The next day, I opened my laptop and started searching for solo vacations. Nothing big, nothing flashy, just mine. A quiet beach retreat in Florida caught my eye, small, remote, and peaceful. It looked perfect, a place where I could read books, sleep in, and not have someone tugging at my sleeve for juice or needing me to organize a last-minute family errand. I didn't mention it right away. I wanted to hold the joy in my hands a little longer before my family tried to take it from me. But I made the mistake of bringing it up at our weekly Sunday dinner, hoping, foolishly, that I'd be met with a smile. Just one. My mom lit up, not with joy for me, but with ideas. "That's perfect. We should all go. The twins would love the beach." Before I could even say no, Kate jumped in. "Oh my God, yes, Jack and I could use a break. You can take the boys swimming while we go out for a couple's massage." I sat there, frozen. My father nodded along, already talking about upgrading the resort. No one, not a single person, asked if that's what I wanted. My private retreat, the one I had planned for myself after years of self-neglect, was being turned into yet another family obligation, a glorified babysitting trip in disguise. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling for hours. I thought about the time I had given up weekends to watch the twins, the promotions I had declined because they needed me, the relationships I never had time to nurture, the holidays where I catered to everyone else's comfort while no one asked if I was okay. And that's when I made a decision that changed everything. I booked another trip, a different resort, this time on a small, quiet island. No family-friendly attractions, no kid zones, just quiet, sun, and solitude. I kept the booking secret. I continued to let them think I was going along with their plan. When they suggested activities for our vacation, I smiled and nodded. I didn't fight. I didn't protest. I just disappeared into the background like I always had, only this time it was strategic. I arranged my PTO, packed my suitcase in secret, and transferred emergency funds to a prepaid travel card. I even disabled location sharing on my phone and told my boss to expect a possible call from my mother claiming an emergency. He gave me a knowing nod. I wasn't the first woman he'd seen trying to break free from a family that demanded too much. When the day came, I got to the airport early and went to a different terminal. I watched from a distance as Kate and my parents arrived, laughing and dragging luggage, oblivious. They looked like a happy little sitcom family, just missing their built-in supporting character. The texts started coming once they realized I wasn't at the gate. "Where are you?" "Gate B12. Are you lost?" "Elizabeth, the boys are asking for you." "Are you okay?" And finally, "How could you do this to us?" I turned off my phone, boarded my flight, and stared out the window as the plane lifted off the ground. For the first time in decades, I wasn't running toward my family's needs. I was running away from them, toward something that was just mine. Not a vacation from life, a return to it. The first time I heard the ocean that wasn't muffled by screaming toddlers or my sister's endless complaints, I nearly cried. My resort wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. It was a peaceful, tucked-away island retreat with a view of the water, a small yoga platform, and rooms that smelled like clean linen and coconut oil. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to "Aunt Lizzie, I'm hungry," or a group text about some family emergency. I woke up to silence, stillness, me. But freedom comes with a side of guilt when you've spent your entire life feeling responsible for other people's happiness. The first 2 days, I kept glancing at the clock like I was still on call. Noon? The twins would be eating lunch. 3 p.m.? Kate would be texting me about bath time. My body still moved on a schedule that wasn't mine. I didn't even touch the beach at first. I stayed inside, curled up with a book I had tried to finish for the last 3 years. Something always came up, but on the third day, something shifted. A young couple at the resort invited me to a beach yoga session. I almost declined out of instinct, like I should be doing something more useful. But I surprised myself and said yes. The sun warmed my skin, the sea breeze tangled my hair, and the instructor's voice was the first one in weeks that wasn't demanding something of me. I felt clumsy and out of place at first, wobbling in Warrior 2, but the instructor smiled at me like I belonged there. For the first time, I didn't feel like someone's backup plan. I just felt alive. That night, I had dinner alone at the beachside cafe. A waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, asked if I wanted the couple's corner moved for privacy. I told her, "It's just me." And she smiled. "Good," she said. "Then you'll get the best view." I watched the sunset with a glass of wine, barefoot in the sand. It sounds cliché, but it felt like a baptism. I let the waves wash over all the years I spent as Kate's helper, Mom's fixer, Dad's afterthought. For once, I wasn't anyone's anything. I was me. On the 5th day, I finally turned my phone back on. Mistake. 147 missed calls, over 300 text messages. My voicemail box was full. Most of the early messages were confused. "Where are you? Are you okay?" Then came the guilt trips. "The boys are crying," my mom said. "You've abandoned your family." And finally, the angry ones. "How could you do this to us, Elizabeth?" I braced myself for the one person who always cut deepest, Kate. "You've ruined everything," she texted. "The twins keep asking for Aunt Lizzie. Jack had to cancel meetings because of you. I can't believe you're this selfish." But there was one message that made me pause. It was from my dad. "Please just tell us you're safe. I don't understand what's happening, but I want to." It was the first message in years that wasn't a command, not a judgment, just concern. And it shattered something in me. I replied once to the family group chat. "I'm safe. I'm having a real vacation. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Please respect that." Then I turned off notifications again. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel bad for asking for space. The remaining 5 days of my solo vacation were something I can only describe as soul medicine. With the chaos of my family muted and the burden of obligation temporarily lifted, I started to rediscover something I hadn't touched in years. Joy. Pure, unfiltered, undemanded joy. I read 3 entire novels without being interrupted. I journaled pages and pages of feelings I didn't even know I had bottled up. I joined a group of solo travelers for a paddleboarding lesson, fell off twice, laughed harder than I had in a decade. One night, I even had dinner with a man I met at the resort's coffee bar. Nothing serious, just warm conversation under string lights by the shore. But it reminded me that I'm more than someone's sister, aunt, or fallback babysitter. I'm still a woman with dreams, a sense of humor, and a life that deserves to be lived on her own terms. Eventually, though, I knew I had to return, but not to the same life. I didn't go home right away. I'd already booked a hotel room for 2 nights near my apartment. Neutral territory. I used that time to prepare. I changed the locks. I updated emergency contacts at work. I even made a list of boundaries I intended to enforce going forward. Everything had to be crystal clear, because once you start choosing yourself after a lifetime of being second, people don't always take it well. The only reason my family found out I was back in town was because I accidentally liked a coworker's Instagram story. Classic digital slip. Within hours, my mother and Kate were at my apartment building, buzzing my intercom nonstop. I watched from the hotel window across the street as they frantically knocked, gesturing like women in a soap opera. For the first time, I felt oddly detached. Watching them play out their performance from afar, I didn't feel anger. I felt confirmation. The next morning, I agreed to meet them at a local coffee shop. Public space, neutral ground, no twins, no manipulation behind closed doors. I arrived early, sat in a corner with a clear view of the entrance and the back exit. Years of emotional warfare teach you to strategize. When they arrived, Mom, Kate, and even Jack, I didn't let them speak first. I laid my script on the table, literally and figuratively. "I'm setting boundaries," I said, voice firm but calm. "They are not up for negotiation." Kate immediately broke down in tears, claiming the twins were traumatized. Mom followed with guilt. "After everything we've done for you." Jack surprisingly tried to mediate, offering a compromise where I'd only watch the kids every other weekend. My dad mostly sat silent, uncomfortable, but then Kate hit me with the line that finally snapped something inside me. "You're being selfish. Family means sacrifice." I smiled, slow and tired. "Yes, Kate, it does, but it's supposed to go both ways. When was the last time any of you sacrificed anything for me?" Silence. I pulled out my calendar, printed, highlighted, every weekend booked, every holiday babysitting, every time I said yes at the expense of my own life. My mom tried to interrupt with, "That's what aunts do." "No," I said, "that's what paid babysitters do, and if you need that much help, maybe it's time you hired one." Kate stormed out in tears. Mom followed, shaking her head and muttering about how she didn't raise me to be like this. But Jack stayed. He looked genuinely sorry. "We did take advantage," he admitted. "I'm sorry for that." My dad lingered for a moment, then said, "We never meant to hurt you." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest I'd ever gotten, and for once, that was enough. That day, I officially started over. The days after the coffee shop confrontation were quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that follows an earthquake. You know the ground has shifted, but you're waiting to see what else might crumble. I moved out within a week. I found a smaller apartment across town, in a building with a doorman who had already been briefed on my situation. My name wasn't even on the mailbox. I requested it that way. Only my job and a small circle of close friends knew my new address. I needed the space, the safety, the distance, emotionally, mentally, and physically. I wish I could say the hardest part was the move, the logistics, the packing, but it wasn't. The hardest part was realizing how little I had for me. I didn't have hobbies. I didn't have a large friend group. I hadn't made time for a social life. I had been so consumed by being available, the helper, the babysitter, the good daughter, that I'd lost the woman underneath all that. So I started from scratch. I signed up for a pottery class. I joined a local book club. I said yes to dinners with coworkers that I used to decline out of guilt or exhaustion. That first weekend, I stayed up late just because I could. I went to a farmer's market and lingered without rushing. I spent an hour at a bookstore flipping through pages I wasn't buying, just being. No texts about last-minute babysitting, no guilt-tripping calls, no "the twins are asking for you" messages. It was eerie at first, like waiting for a storm to roll in. But it never came. My mother did try. She called my office multiple times until the receptionist kindly told her we didn't accept personal calls. One day, Kate even showed up outside my building, standing across the street with sunglasses on like a soap opera villain. She didn't come inside, though. I think the doorman's glare was enough. Eventually, the emotional grenades started arriving. Letters from my mom about family betrayal, voicemails from Kate full of guilt-soaked accusations, but the one that hit differently? A short email from Jack. "I'm sorry," he wrote, "for my part in enabling all of this." He didn't say much else, just that he'd started stepping up more with the twins and that Kate was adjusting poorly. He admitted it was easier when I was the one picking up all the slack, and that maybe it never should have been that way in the first place. I didn't respond, but I cried when I read it, not because it fixed anything, but because someone finally said it. 3 weeks in, my boss called me in for a one-on-one. I braced myself, but it wasn't bad news. She'd noticed a change in me. "You're sharper lately, focused. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." For the first time in years, I wasn't burning out in the background. I was shining, and someone saw it. I've even started dating, slowly, cautiously, with someone who doesn't flinch when I say, "I need space," and doesn't expect me to be available 24/7. It feels foreign, but it also feels right. Internally, the biggest change isn't what I've added, but what I've let go of. The constant guilt, that background hum of anxiety that used to follow me everywhere. It's quiet now. Some days it's completely gone. And for the first time, I don't feel like I owe anyone an explanation for my peace. I'm still healing, but I'm no longer apologizing for it. It's been nearly 2 months since I moved into my new apartment, and each day feels like peeling away another layer of a life that never really belonged to me. One quiet Saturday morning, I got a knock on the door. Not my apartment door, thankfully, but my email. Jack had written again. This time, it wasn't just an apology. He shared something that made my heart ache and swell at the same time. "I've started taking the twins out every weekend. Just me and them. No dumping them on your doorstep. It's been hard, but good. They're starting to talk to me more." He added, "Kate isn't happy about the changes, but maybe change is overdue." For the first time, I felt like the ripple of my boundaries had reached someone else. Jack wasn't perfect, but he was trying, and that mattered. A week later, I ran into my dad outside my old neighborhood grocery store. It was jarring. We stood in front of the canned soup aisle like strangers. He looked smaller than I remembered. Tired. "You look well," he said. "Thanks," I replied, bracing for the follow-up. Some guilt, some plea, some passive-aggressive jab, but none came. Instead, he asked, "Would you like to get lunch sometime?" "Just you and me." We met at a quiet cafe near my work. No dramatics, no Kate, just us. And for the first time in my life, my father didn't speak to me like I was just the backdrop to Kate's spotlight. "I never realized how much you were doing," he said slowly, as if confessing to himself more than to me. "I thought we were just doing what was best for the family, but we missed so much." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest I had ever heard. He didn't try to defend their choices. He didn't try to blame me. He just listened. When I told him about my pottery class, my promotion, and the small circle of friends I was finally building, he actually smiled. "You're building a life without us, and it looks good on you," he said. That moment was more healing than I expected. But of course, things weren't simple after that. The next day, my mother left 3 voicemails and a long, emotionally charged email. "This isn't you," she wrote. "You're not like this. You're having a breakdown, Elizabeth." And Kate? She took to social media with cryptic quotes and not-so-subtle digs. Funny how some people change once they think they don't need you anymore. But their words no longer held power. They were echoes of the old dynamic, of control masked as love. And I wasn't that Elizabeth anymore. I had spent too long defining myself by how useful I was to everyone else. Now I was choosing to define myself by how true I was to me. I started mentoring a junior colleague at work, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the energy for. I even joined a local hiking group. I hadn't realized how much nature could reset your soul until I stood at the top of a quiet ridge, wind on my face, heart pounding from the climb. But light. I'm still seeing the guy I met at pottery class. We're not rushing anything. He doesn't ask me to change or sacrifice. He just likes me for me. And that's new and healing. I'm building a life where I'm not the family's fallback plan or the eternal support beam. I'm not a ghost in my own story anymore. I'm here. I'm whole. I'm choosing myself. It's been 3 months since I stepped away from the life that was never really mine, and for the first time, I don't feel guilty for breathing. There was a time when the silence after rejecting a family obligation used to keep me up at night, when my mother's disappointed sigh felt like a weight I couldn't shake. But now, the silence? It's peaceful. I haven't spoken to Kate in over a month, not since her last text that said, "You've changed. This isn't who you are." She's right, I have changed, but not in the way she meant. I haven't become cold. I haven't become selfish. I've just started loving myself enough to stop being their doormat. And honestly, that terrifies them. My mother still tries. She sends long, guilt-laced messages, some pretending to be concerned, others full of thinly veiled anger. A few days ago, she left a voicemail saying, "You'll regret pushing family away when you're older. No one wants to die alone, Elizabeth." But here's the truth she never understood. I was already dying alone inside a house full of people who only saw me when they needed something. Since moving to my new place, I've slowly filled the walls, not with reminders of obligations or framed photos from someone else's life milestones, but with things that feel like me. A clumsy ceramic bowl I made in class, a print I bought from a local artist, a postcard from my first solo hike with the group. Every item whispers, "This is your space. You earned this." My weekends aren't marked by tantrums, sticky fingers, or emergency babysitting anymore. They're marked by quiet coffees, bookstore afternoons, and spontaneous plans with people who ask me how I'm doing and wait for an honest answer. I still miss the twins sometimes. Of course I do. They're innocent. They didn't choose to be pawns in this family dynamic, but loving them doesn't mean sacrificing myself. That's the line I've drawn. Last weekend, I mailed them a small package, just a pair of books and a handwritten note. "I love you. I always will. But Aunt Lizzie is taking care of herself right now. That's important too. Be kind, be curious. I'll see you someday soon." Whether Kate reads it to them or tosses it out, I don't know. But I needed to say it. I needed them to hear that version of me, the one that chose love over guilt, even if it's from a distance. My father has kept his word. We check in now and then. He doesn't pressure. He doesn't preach. Sometimes we just talk about silly things, what books I'm reading, how my new plant is somehow still alive. It's quiet and simple. And it's enough. Jack, surprisingly, has become a better father. Maybe my exit opened his eyes too. He even thanked me in an email for shaking things loose. He's stepping up, taking the boys to school, and finally giving Kate the reality check she never wanted. As for Kate, she's still figuring it out, and that's not my responsibility anymore. The biggest change? My relationship with myself. I've stopped apologizing for the space I take up. I no longer second-guess every decision. I don't measure my worth by how useful I am to someone else. I measure it by how honest I'm being with my own needs, my own heart. Next month, I'm planning my first solo trip overseas, Italy, a little town by the coast. Just me, a journal, and a promise to never shrink myself again. This isn't about revenge. It's not about proving anything. It's about healing, about standing tall in a life I built with my own hands for the first time on my own terms. This isn't the end of a story. It's the first real chapter of mine.